As we previously reported over the weekend and on Friday, Donald Trump's plane was right next to Vladimir Putin's plane, the Russian embassy plane that made a stop at Dulles International Airport to pick up some diplomats who were leaving Washington, D.C. You see Donald Trump's plane right there. You see the Russian plane right there. It was joined by the United Arab Emirates plane, all right next to each other. This was captured by Andrew Layden. Hat tip to him. And over the weekend, you had all three planes, UAE, Russia plane, and Trump's plane, all next to each other. Also, want to talk about the posts that Donald Trump was making over the weekend and specifically on Sunday. Post after post, dozens of posts, post. And what was he posting? Things like this. Where we go one, we go all. This is a QAnon post right here. He's reposting an account called Spiritual Street Fighter 17. The QAnon slogan, which is a actual death cult, is where we go one, we go all. And Donald Trump is reposting that. Donald Trump has reposted over 1,500 QAnon posts in the past 18 months. We've been covering it here on the MeidasTouch Network, but I guess when it comes to corporate media, if you have a bad debate or if your throat is a little bit sore, then that requires 5 op-eds in the New York Times to drop out of the race. But if you are an adjudicated sexual assaulter, convicted felon, found liable for civil fraud, bankrupted most of the companies that you have ever touched, and you continue to post did I mention, led an insurrection against the country and continue to post QAnon memes, and then just have your airplane just right next to the Russian embassy plane and the UAE plane. Whatevs. We're going to cover it here on the MeidasTouch Network. What else was Donald Trump posting? He posted this. Elizabeth Lynn Cheney is guilty of treason. Read truth if you want televised military tribunals. The leader of the Republican Party calling for televised military tribunals against a Republican because she was part of the January 6th committee. Donald Trump also posted this photograph of President Biden. He also posted this bizarre photo of himself that says, the man who saved America, and he changed the American flag so that the American flag now says Trump. He also says, hold on, I'm coming. He says, I will totally obliterate the deep state. He posts this bizarre meme about the 2024 debate. He posts this bizarre meme of him as a boxer, which looks nothing like him. He posts this bizarre meme of a fake Time magazine cover. He then reposts the following with Steve Bannon reporting to prison today. Donald Trump reposts this quote from Steve Bannon. Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answers to save my country, this country will be saved. I stand with Steve Bannon, Donald Trump reposts. And then it says, if you want this corrupt globalist judge removed and charged, repost this. And it says, Juan Merchan, the same crooked judge that convicted Trump, has now sentenced Steve Bannon to 4 months in prison. You know, that's discernibly false right there. You know, the judge who sentenced Steve Bannon to prison is not Justice Merchan, it's Judge Nichols, a federal judge who Donald Trump appointed. But when it comes to MAGA, let them lie about everything. Let's just lie and say it wasn't the judge who Trump appointed, Judge Nichols. And let's just lie and say it was Justice Juan Merchan who's involved in the Trump sentencing. Again, just blatant falsehoods. And then, of course, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans would lean in and help a convicted criminal like Steve Bannon. Then Donald Trump posts this of former First Lady Michelle Obama and has this like edited photo of her that's where she said, "I'm not proud of this country." And then he has this photo of Melania, who he cheated on with a porn star and multiple other people, and then bragged about sexually assaulting other women. And he met Melania at the Kit Kat Club through a modeling agency that imported Eastern European women. And then her whole backstory seems to be entirely untrue. And then it says, "I became a citizen because I love this country." Donald Trump then reposts this. "Who is running our country? If you don't feel safe with this couple having the nuclear codes, retruth it." And it's a photo of First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and President Biden. By the way, dozens of post over and over again. And then Donald Trump posts the following: "Weekend at Biden's." And this is what Donald Trump thinks is funny. By the way, while Donald Trump is doing that, I think it reeks of desperation, because still, if you look at like the aggregate of polls from 538, Biden's actually up post debate, because the political punditry class from Washington, D.C. and from New York, I don't think they quite realize that to Americans who are currently experiencing life or death issues if Donald Trump were to come into power, and real Americans who actually realize the benefits that President Biden brought them and don't look at this with the privilege and luxury of trying to have these philosophical debates, they recognize the existential threat that Donald Trump poses. And to a lot of people, you could watch that debate and say, you know what? Biden was not a good debater. Biden was off. He didn't look that good. The optics were bad. He stuttered. Sure, all accurate, but he told the truth. He actually answered the questions, and he's someone who would protect and preserve democracy, whereas Donald Trump behaved like a ranting, raving lunatic the entire time and quite literally said a lie every time his mouth started moving. But you've got Biden up as well, and again, some of these post-debate polls, and I'm not big on polls, but I'm just trying to share with you that the fact that corporate media, they want to go poll, and then even post-debate where it's not reflecting what they're saying, and they're like, oh, let's just go with our gut, and we thought that Biden didn't do a good job, so let's push for that. Meanwhile, when it comes to an adjudicated sexual assault or convicted felon insurrectionist and Donald Trump, we'll just be like, whatever. By the way, remember that Liz Cheney meme that I showed you before that Donald Trump posted about holding live military tribunals on TV? Donald Trump's top supporters like Jack Posobiec and others responded, military tribunals, yes, it's coming in 6 months. Military tribunals for the entire J6 Unselect Committee. This will be a great day. We need military tribunals. We, the people, want you to answer for the J6 Committee show trial. Careful, Liz, your panic is showing. He's right. Vote out. Lock all of them up. Get that neck snapping and those undies full of crapping. This is what MAGA is, and I think the American people recognize the threat of that. Oh, guess who is in Moscow recently? Kanye West. Kanye West arrived in Moscow staying at the Four Seasons Hotel right next to the Kremlin. And guess what happened on June 8th? Putin seized the 5-star Four Seasons right next to the Kremlin. The former owner was imprisoned for 9 years a few months back. It's exactly what Donald Trump wants to do here in the United States. He'll imprison people, take their money, and that's what Donald Trump's after, and that's what Donald Trump's up to. Meanwhile, you talk about the post from President Biden. He says the following: freeing hardworking Americans from the crushing burden of student debt means millions would finally have the confidence to buy their first home, open a business, or start a family. Debt relief is about dignity, but it's good for our economy too. To the entire LGBTQI plus community, know that I see you who you are, made in the image of God and deserving the dignity, respect, and support. Or President Biden posts a detailed plan. How about that? Detailed plans for the American people. President Biden writes, While Republican elected officials push extreme abortion bans, at VP and I will continue to fight for access to reproductive health care and call on Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Biden-Harris administration has acted to 1. Help ensure that women receive the care they need in an emergency. 2. Protect access to safe and effective medication abortion. 3. Defend the right to travel for medical care. 4. Expand access to affordable contraception, including under the Affordable Care Act. 5. Strengthen privacy protection for patients and doctors. 6. Support access to reproductive health care for service members and veterans. 7. Partner with state leaders on the front lines of protecting reproductive freedom. Wow, like actual things, a list, detail, how he's going to be protecting women's reproductive rights versus Donald Trump posting QAnon memes, actual weirdo death cult memes. Are you kidding me? Then President Biden posted this as well. Unlike the other guy, I'll continue standing up against dictators like Putin because America bows to no one. And here's what President Biden said at the recent speech he gave, and he posted this. Let's play that clip.
And unlike the other guy, we're going to stand up to dictators like Putin because America bows to no one ever.
And then, of course, you have a new CBS YouGov poll that says 54% of registered voters say that Donald Trump should not be running for president, that Trump should not be running for president. So can we just focus on the data, folks? And speaking of focusing on the data, that's something that I would like to do. And you know who focuses on the data? Mike Madrid, former top Republican operative, now a pro-democracy warrior. Here's what Mike Madrid said on a recent panel that he spoke at the other day. Play this clip. Yes, and I care about data. You know the type of data that I care about? How about we take a look at what actual historian who's correctly predicted all the U.S. elections, what he has to say. Here is Alan Lichtman, and here's what he's got to say when he goes, can we focus on the data, please? Play this clip.
All of these pundits and pollsters and analysts that you see on all the cable channels and all the networks have no track record in predicting elections. And yet they come on and they claim they know how this debate is going to affect the outcome of elections. They have no idea. It's sports talk radio. It may be entertaining, but it has no scientific basis.
So what is the impact, do you think?
Zero. Debates are not predictive of outcomes. Hillary Clinton won all 3 debates, still lost. John Kerry won all the debates, still lost. Barack Obama got trounced, 72 to 20% in the poll, worse than Biden, and went on to win. That's why we rely on the 13 keys which tap into the structure of how elections really work. And they show that Democrats' really only chance to win, contrary to everything you've heard, is with Biden running. Look at the incumbency key. Biden checks that off. The contest key, he checks that off. He was uncontested. It takes 6 keys to count out the White House party.
But you know,
that means
Alan,
of the remaining 11 keys, 6 would have to fall. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Biden doesn't run. They lose the contest key. They lose the incumbency, and only 4 more keys would have to fall.
I think that that's actually kind of what I was trying to get at here, is that the problem right now is that the Democratic Party is considering replacing Biden mostly because it's unclear whether or not he actually physically can carry out the rest of this campaign and put up a fight against his opponent. So that seems like a fundamentally different thing than some of the items that you have in your rubric.
It's a huge mistake. They're not doctors. They don't know whether Biden is physically capable of carrying out a second term or not. Remember, a lot of folks were saying the same thing about Ronald Reagan, who was, 73, and age was very different then. And they said, he's not capable of carrying out another term. He won 49 states. So this is all foolhardy nonsense. The same pundits and pollsters who led us down the primrose path in 2016 are giving the Democrats horrible advice. This proves what I've been saying for years. Republicans have no principles. Democrats have no spine. Republicans are sticking with a blatant liar who lied for every 1 minute and 20 seconds of that debate Donald Trump put out a lie. And by the way, lies stick. Debate performances can be overcome. And now the first sign of adversity, the spineless Democrats want to throw under the bus their own incumbent president. My goodness.
So there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million subscribers together. And it's time we rally for our democracy. It's just that simple. This, to me, isn't about Democrat, Republican, independent, liberal, progressive, conservative, whatever. This is about the existential threat posed by the Trump movement and MAGA, which is not mainstream Republican, which is not conservative. And it's important that we all rally for our democracy. It's that simple. You see those posts that Trump's making? You want to hear that every day for 4 years and him try to actually act on it with Project 2025? That's no. This is the United States of America, damn it. Again, hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.
The Supreme Court will announce on Monday if former President Trump is immune from criminal prosecution. The landmark decision could have serious consequences for Trump's pending legal troubles and send shockwaves into the 2024 presidential race. On Friday, the High Court also ruled that the DOJ overstepped by charging hundreds of people with obstruction for storming the Capitol on January 6th. The D.C. District Court now reopening some of those cases. About 52 rioters were convicted and sentenced with the obstruction charge as their only felony. Chief Justice John Roberts penned the 6-3 majority opinion alongside mostly conservative and one liberal justice, saying, quote, "Nothing in the text or statutory history suggests that the law is designed to impose up to 20 years imprisonment on essentially all defendants who commit obstruction of justice in any way. Prosecutors can still file obstruction charges against rioters if they're able to prove the defendants tried to stop the arrival of certificates used to count electoral votes." Special counsel Jack Smith likely to continue to pursue the same charge against former President Trump. Joining me now, Elie Honig, former federal prosecutor, CNN senior legal analyst. So, Elie, we know this. On Monday, this hot news cycle is going to take a major shift because finally we get the immunity decision. What are the possible outcomes?
Yeah, Michael, so we will get this on Monday. We can dispense with all the guessing games. There's 3 opinions left. This is the last opinion day. It's coming on Monday sometime 10 to 11 a.m. Also, this is truly unprecedented. We love to say things are unprecedented. Usually they're sort of precedented. We have no idea. This has been purely the stuff of law school hypothetical up till now. Now, I do not think we are going to see a categorical win or loss either way. What I mean by that is I do not think the court's going to say criminal immunity does not exist, therefore Donald Trump, you lose. I do not think the Supreme Court's going to say criminal immunity does exist and it applies to you, Donald Trump, therefore you win and case over. I think what they're going to do is announce, yes, there is such thing as criminal immunity. Here is the rule for how it applies. I think that rule is going to have something to do with whether the conduct was within the scope of the official job. And then the big question is, does the Supreme Court say, and here's how we apply this new rule to Donald Trump? Or do they kick it back to the trial court and say, now you have to hold a series of hearings and you decide whether it applies to Donald Trump?
Most importantly for the 2024 cycle, Monday's July 1st, do you see any scenario where he could go to trial in this case, the January 6th case?
I do see a scenario, but it is narrowing and thin. The way that would have to happen is the Supreme Court would have to say there is criminal immunity, but it does not apply to you, Donald Trump. Therefore, back to Judge Chuck and the trial judge. She would then get the case back in her court, essentially, as of early July. And she has said that she intends to give the parties about the same amount of time that they had on the clock when the case went up on appeal, which was just over 2 months. So if she wanted, she could theoretically try to schedule a trial to start in late August, early September, but that is right on the cusp of the election. I don't know that a single district judge is going to have the nerve to say, well, we're going to take one of the 2 major presidential candidates and confine him to a courtroom 8 hours a day in September and October of an election year. So there's a possibility, but it's really narrow.
If it goes the way Elie Honig suspects, then how and by whom will it be determined whether Trump was acting within his official scope?
So that really is the $1 million question, because if the Supreme Court decides you were out of the scope, then it goes back to Judge Chutkan and she can proceed with trial. What I think is more likely is they're going to throw it back to Judge Chutkan and say, you have to hold a series of hearings. You have to make a determination. A, what's the scope of the presidency as it relates to an election? B, was Trump within or without that scope? And C, a big question that I have no idea what they're going to say. What if it's mixed? What if 80% of his conduct was outside the scope of the presidency, but 20% was in? Do you pull that 20% out of the case? I have no idea. And that's why I'm eager to see this opinion. But if they say, District Court, you have to take it back, you have to do further fact finding, then the chances of this case being tried before the election fall down to zero. There's just no way to get that all done.
The Supreme Court set to hand down their final opinions of this term, which means that they will have to finally resolve the question of whether former President Trump can claim immunity in his federal election subversion case, which of course touches on his actions before and during the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Trump's main argument is that he cannot be held criminally responsible for anything that he did while he was in office because they were official acts as president. Elliot Williams, let's walk through what the options may be when this opinion comes down. What are we all going to be scrambling to read in this opinion as those interns run it out to us?
As they run it out. So I think based on how oral argument met, it seems that there's a majority on the Supreme Court that wants to find that some acts of the president are immune from prosecution. That's probably acts that were committed or done in the president's official capacity, sending troops, for instance, into battle. There's another sphere, I think, of conduct that will be seen as not immune from prosecution, things carried out in the president's personal capacity. Now, the court could have decided, and they can decide, we think these are official acts, these other acts are not official. It appears that they're not going to do that. It appear, and this is all based on what a majority of the justices were saying at oral argument, that they're going to send it back to the trial court to have hearings to figure out which acts fall into each bucket.
And so the bottom line for that is that it will delay any trial for Trump in this January 6th situation until after the election?
It will delay any trial for Trump after the January 6th election. Now, something we've talked about on this program is the legal system exists outside of the political calendar, and it takes a long time to have hearings. Now, many voters see it as important to have a decision on this prior to Election Day, but that's simply not what the Supreme Court, I think, cares about, for better or for worse. It's a choice that they're making. They are choosing to take as long as they are and to kick it down and so on. However, it's not their obligation to rule on anything prior to a political deadline.
Yeah, I mean, but do you think Americans view that as they view it as plausible that the Supreme Court is above politics?
No, they do not in any way regard it as plausible that the Supreme Court is above politics. And considering that the Supreme Court has an approval rating now that rivals roughly what Congress's is, it's pretty low. People don't have a high opinion of the Supreme Court. People see the Supreme Court as unethical, not policing themselves in an effective way, not burdened by politics and so on. Of course, the public holds the Supreme Court accountable for questions like this. And like I said, it is still a political choice to rule in the manner that they're doing. Now, they can wash their hands a little bit and say that, well, no, we're not stepping in an election. We're not putting a thumb on the scale. But in effect, they are. And, that's where we are with the Supreme Court today. Yeah.
I'm Margaret Brennan in Washington, and this week on Face the Nation, Democrats defend President Biden after a disastrous debate, and a new CBS poll reveals whether it changed the way voters see the candidates now. President Biden's team sought out Thursday's debate to draw a contrast with Donald Trump and hoped it would soothe concerns about the incumbent's age and stamina. Instead, after a meandering, frequently hard-to-follow performance, not even Mr. Biden's closest supporters could ignore the obvious.
It was a slow start. That's obvious to everyone. I'm not going to debate that point.
That was strike one. If this were a ball game, he's got two more swings.
The president went on damage control.
When you get knocked down, you get back up.
And spent the weekend at fundraisers as critics outside some of those events and the nation's leading newspapers called for him to step aside. Mr. Biden said he's staying in the race, but some voters are voicing doubt.
I'm not so sure he's as sharp as he should be.
After what happened last night,
Democrats should wake up today with a plan B.
We'll have results of a new CBS poll. Maryland Governor Wes Moore, who is campaigning for President Biden, will join us. Meanwhile, despite repeatedly making falsehoods on stage, former President Trump claimed victory.
We had a big victory against a man that really is looking to destroy our country.
But his legal problems could cut that short as the Supreme Court prepares to rule tomorrow on whether former presidents are immune from criminal prosecution. We'll hear from possible Trump running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Plus, we'll check in with Congressman Jim Himes, the top Democrat on the Intel Committee, and get the latest from the head of UNICEF, Catherine Russell, on the humanitarian crises putting millions of children at risk around the world. It's all just ahead on Face the Nation. Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We begin this morning with reaction to the first presidential debate of 2024. Our polling unit asked voters how they view the candidates now, including their cognitive health. The results are not encouraging for the president. The number of voters who say President Biden has the cognitive ability to serve has dropped from 35% earlier this month to 27% after the debate. That's the lowest number since CBS began asking voters that question last September. Nearly 3/4 of all registered voters now say he shouldn't be running, and nearly half of Democrats say he shouldn't remain the nominee, an extraordinary number for an incumbent who didn't face a competitive primary. We should also note that half of all voters also say former President Trump does not have the cognitive health to serve. Voters give former President Trump a significant edge, though, when asked which candidate explained his ideas clearly, inspired confidence, and appeared presidential. Joining us now to discuss all of this is Maryland Governor Wes Moore. He's in Milwaukee, where he has been campaigning for President Biden's re-election this weekend. Welcome back, Governor.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
Governor, it wasn't a good night for the president, and I'll save us time because I know you're going to tell us, look at presidential performance, not debate performance. Everyone has a bad night. Barack Obama once had a bad night. But at 81 years old, this is a different set of factors for President Biden. Why was he struggling Thursday?
Well, I think both candidates struggled. I don't think either candidate had a very good